My stepson, Owen, he's a really wonderful guy. And when he was a little kid, he's about 20 now, and we'd ask him what he wanted to do. He'd always say, go to Disneyland. No matter where we were. I mean, if we were in San Francisco, and we'd be out there, hey, Owen, what do you want to do today? And we're looking at the Golden Gate Bridge. He'd say, I'm thinking about Alcatraz maybe. He says, let's go to Disneyland. I mean, the moon, let's go to Disneyland. It didn't matter where he was. And when I started thinking about that, I mean, he was just like a repeating record. When I started thinking about that, what's he really talking about? My sense is that he had an idea of Disneyland in his heart. He could feel it in his bones. He could see himself walking down Main Street with a cotton candy in his hand, and there's a Matterhorn. He's looking at that. You ever seen kids do that? They walk around, wow, what's this? It's like walking through New York City if you've never been there before. But he had his heart aligned with Disneyland, and that's what he wanted. My sense is that many of us as adults have lost a sense of that wonderful creative spirit, that I want to go to Disneyland point of view ourselves. And my work, in one way or another, is all about that, connecting with that wonderful, magical, creative spirit. And my sense is also that a lot of us have forgotten what that means in ourselves. I want to go to Disneyland. Do you know what that is? Do you have a sense of what your purpose is? I'm not talking about your work assignment. I'm not talking about yourself as a mother or a father or a son. I'm talking about what you stand for, what you're all about, what you've come into this life for. About 8 years ago, I stopped talking to my wife. Actually, she stopped talking to me too. And it had been going on for a couple days. And the situation is that I'd been working to do some work in Asia. And I finally sat down with my wife and I said, I was going to do some work with Asia, and she was going to come with me. It was going to be a month-long trip, and we hadn't spent that much time together. And I said, let's sit down. And she said, okay. I said, what's going on? And she says, I feel frightened. And I said, I do too. We don't know what's going to happen. Was it worth the time buying the air ticket? Were the people in Jakarta really the real thing? Did they really want me to come over there? Were they interested? Would we get along? Would our marriage last? All sorts of wondering things. What ifs, and all the worries. So I said, why don't you sleep upstairs? I'll sleep downstairs on the couch, and I'll ask for a dream. And this is what I dreamt. I had flown over to Bangkok, was having a business meeting around a conference table, and at 2:30 in the afternoon, I got up, went downstairs, got into a cab, and headed to the airport. And there was a voiceover, like in commercials where they have people moving, they have voices over the commercial. There were two voiceovers. One was a Judeo-Christian voiceover, and the other was a Buddhist voiceover, since I spent some time exploring those two spiritual practices. And the first voiceover said, who are you to stand in the way of the Red Sea parting? The second voiceover said, big mind or life is much grander than you ever possibly considered. So I woke up with a smile on my face. I'll get to that in a minute, why that was the case. And I looked at my wife, and she came downstairs and said, sit down, I got to tell you this dream. And she said, oh, great. And we were fine. The level of fear went way down, and we were able to move forward. The idea is, if thinking about the biblical story, the Red Sea's parting, Moses, the Israelites leaving Egypt, they were up against it. As you see in that picture, actually it's from the movie, the Ten Commandments, this picture. They were up against it. Think about the Egyptians are going to come after them. Think about who's holding up the water. Think about, will we get to the promised land? All those thoughts going on, all the what ifs. Kind of like, will I keep my job? Will I have to transfer? What will I do if I lose my job? Thoughts like that. And what came to me was, I got to keep my eye on the prize. I've decided I'm going there. I've made that choice. And to walk. Be frightened. That goes with the territory. In fact, courage requires that in a way. It's not without fear. And that choice, I think, that ability to choose, that power that we all have to choose how we want to lead our professional and personal life is ours. Nobody can take that away from you unless you give it up. Unless you give it up to the, quote, Egyptians who are coming after you, who you think are coming after you, or whatever your fear-based ideas tell you. You have the power to choose. You can choose to go back. You can choose to stay, or you can choose to walk and keep your focus and deal with what comes up and move toward your promised land.